Wars is part of the Rippin podcast network. In today's episode, hosts Ben Rippin and Kevin Rips explore Pat Tillman's extraordinary journey from NFL player to Army Ranger and the truth behind his untimely death. Dive into Tillman's life, legacy, and the significance of his trading cards in the hobby market. Discover the complexities of a man driven by conviction rather than fame, and learn why his cards continue to resonate with collectors. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Cardboard Wars.
April 22nd, 2004. We are not in a normal location. We're on a canyon road in southeastern Afghanistan. The sun is going down. Pat Tillman, an NFL safety, also an Army Ranger, 27 years old, is moving towards the sound of gunfire to help his fellow brothers, soldiers, and then, unfortunately, to America and the world, he's gone. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The Army initially told his family, told the country, that he died charging an enemy ambush. They pinned a silver star on his chest at a nationally televised memorial service. His family sat there grieving the hero the Army said he was. Weeks later, they found out the truth. Well, to be exact, 5 weeks. Pat Tillman was accidentally killed by his own unit. Now I want you to sit with that for a second, because that is the man we're talking about today. Not just the football player, not just the patriot that the card market has made him into, but this actual human being, complex, brilliant, furious, about the injustice, deeply private. A guy who turned down $9 million from the Rams out of loyalty to the Arizona Cardinals, and then walked away from football entirely after 9/11. Not for the cameras, but because he felt like he had no other choice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cardboard Wars. I am Ben Rippin, today joined with Kevin Rips, and we're talking about an American hero, Pat Tillman.
Yeah, and here's where that connects to the hobby, because no card in the modern football collecting world just captures the tension that you just walked us through, Ben, better than the 2020 Donruss and the 2020 Donruss Optic downtown Pat Tillman card. I'm going to dive into that card more later, but I just wanted to plant that here at the beginning because that card is just the epitome of what you just walked us through.
It happens because Pat Tillman is unlike anyone who has ever appeared on a trading card. Today, we're going to talk about his life, his legacy, and yes, a little bit about the card market, but that's not our focus. Let's get into the life and story of Pat Tillman.
Yeah, who was Pat Tillman, right? Let's go back to the beginning, Ben, because I think the context matters here. Pat Tillman was born November 6, 1976 in Fremont, California. It's kind of in the Bay Area, Northern California. His dad is a lawyer, his mom, a teacher. He's got two brothers, one of them with the most amazing name, by the way, Kevin. The other brother named after you, Richard. And by all accounts, he's intense. He's very curious and really relentlessly driven from a very young age.
Yeah, he plays linebacker at Leland High School outside of San Jose. And that detail matters for card people because a lot of his early identity is linebacker, not safety. He gets to Arizona State, and he's this linebacker who evolves into becoming a safety. That transition is actually part of why he becomes the player that he became. He got the instincts of someone who has to diagnose runs and passes, not just react to receivers.
I remember watching him at Arizona State, Ben. He was an absolute menace. He won the Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year in 97. He's a consensus first-team All-American. Finished his college career with 340 tackles. By the way, he graduated college, and he didn't just graduate, but summa cum laude, which I think is really important to note. Like, this was a very intellectual human being. He had a 3.84 GPA, degree in marketing in 3.5 years. Think about that for a second. This isn't just some dude writing an athletic scholarship. He's legitimately brilliant.
It's definitely a better GPA than Kevin and I got combined, probably.
No doubt.
And then in April 1998, he gets drafted by the Cardinals in the 7th round, 226th overall pick. Now, if you know anything about the Cardinals circa 1998, you know that this is not exactly a franchise flush with a winning culture. No offense, Brian. They're historically bad, and yet Tillman gets picked by them, proves himself, starts 10 games as a rookie, and then the moment that tells you everything about who the guy is.
Yeah. The St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf, those Rams. Super Bowl champions, those Rams. They come to Tillman, offer him that 5-year deal for $9 million that you talked about. And he said no. He said no to the Super Bowl champions. He tells the Cardinals, Benny, this team, this franchise that is constantly bad for years, decades, that he doesn't feel right about leaving them for another team. That's not normal. Players don't do that. Pat Tillman was loyal to a fault and proud of it.
Yeah, a lot of the world is completely coin operated, you might say. Let's talk about his NFL career a little bit more and what he actually does on the field, because I think people sometimes treat his football career as a footnote to the bigger story, and that kind of sells Pat Tillman short. Over 4 seasons with the Cardinals, Tillman racked up 374 total tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. He plays 60 games. He leads the team in tackles multiple times.
You know, Ben, in doing research on this one and also just kind of following Tillman, I learned he actually returned a few punts as well. He might have even punted the ball once or twice. But here's the thing, like those numbers you just shared, they're good numbers, right? Especially considering we're only talking about 4 years. But those aren't like Hall of Fame numbers. Though the Cardinals did retire his number 40, and they put up a bronze statue of him outside of what is now State Farm Stadium. And they call it the Pat Tillman Freedom Plaza. Arizona State retired the number he wore in college, 42. The Pac-12 named its Defensive Player of the Year award after him. The College Football Hall of Fame inducted him in 2010. Like, this isn't a fringe player getting sentimental treatment. He was genuinely one of the best players on that defense of that time. in an era where the Cardinals just couldn't get anything going on the field, especially offensively. But it was also about who he was off the field too.
And he leads the team to the 1998 playoffs, which, let me kind of be real with y'all, is the only playoff win the Cardinals had made in 51 years. Rookie Pat Tillman, he's on the team. He helps him get there. So when people act like he was some marginal player, nah, that's wrong. He was the heart of the Cardinals' defense.
No doubt about it. Now, let's get to the part of the story, though, that I think defines everything and truthfully is the bigger part of the story in the hobby. And when you think about it, like you look at the impact that it's made in the card market, 20 years later, I can't believe it's 20 years later.
September 11th, 2001, Pat Tillman, in his fourth season with the Cardinals, finishes out that year. The team plays their first game back against Denver on the 23rd. And then in the offseason, something shifts for him. He's always kept journals. He's always been deeply interested in politics and philosophy and history. And the events of September 11th, 2001, force kind of an internal reckoning.
Yeah, here's where it gets wild, Ben. And I mean genuinely wild, because Tillman doesn't do a press conference. He doesn't go and hold up a jersey at the podium. He doesn't tweet about it. He doesn't MySpace about it. In the spring of 2002, him and his brother Kevin quietly enlist in the U.S. Army together. May 31st, 2002, they complete basic training together. They complete the Ranger indoctrination program together, and they're both assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Lewis, Washington.
A little bit of home turf there for me. Before he enlists, he marries his high school girlfriend, Marie. The man is tying up every loose end, making every commitment, living by his convictions, and he's getting paid a fraction of what he could be earning. Tillman reportedly turned down a 3-year, $3.6 million contract from the Cardinals. In exchange, he accepted the Army specialist pay of about $18,000 a year.
Now, I'm going to push back gently on the mythology here for a second, though. And trust me, I'm one of the biggest Tillman fans out there. But here's the deal. This is where it gets complicated. And I think Tillman himself would want us to acknowledge this. Pat wasn't naive. He was not what you'd call blindly patriotic. He read Chomsky. He read Thoreau. He had serious doubts about the Iraq War about that war specifically. In fact, his brother Kevin later testified before Congress about his family's skepticism. Pat Tillman wasn't there to be a recruiting like a poster. He was a man with deep convictions who acted on them and then struggled with what he found.
Yeah, he was first deployed to Iraq in March of 2003, and by accounts was deeply disturbed. In fact, he called it illegal. He reached out to Chomsky about meeting when he got back stateside. He told fellow Rangers he was thinking about leaving the Army and campaigning against the Iraq War. This is the real Pat Tillman, not a symbol, just a man with some convictions.
Yeah. Then there's the day, April 22nd, 2004. He's in Afghanistan, Operation Mountain Storm, southeastern Afghanistan near the Pakistan border. His platoon gets split up during a mission. Part of the platoon comes under fire. Tillman's stationed up on a ridge with an Afghan National Army soldier and one other ranger is trying to signal their position. They're waving, they're yelling, they're trying to stop what's happening.
A vehicle in another part of his platoon opens fire anyway. Pat Tillman is struck multiple times. He dies on the ridge at only 27 years old.
And this is where it became a scandal, because within hours, soldiers at the scene know that it's friendly fire. By the next morning, commanders up the chain of command are being informed. The unit destroys his uniform and body armor. They burn them, reportedly to prevent them from being photographed. And then the Army waits, as you mentioned earlier, 5 full weeks to tell his family the truth. 5 weeks. His nationally televised memorial service is held. It's attended by dignitaries, and the story of a heroic ambush front and center. And his family is sitting there grieving a lie.
The Army's official position, ultimately, after multiple investigations, including a Pentagon Inspector General review and multiple congressional hearings, was that there was no formal criminal conspiracy. The Inspector General found that 9 officers, including 4 generals, bore responsibility for mishandling the information. 1 general was sanctioned for lying, but no one faced a court-martial for what happened to the Pat Tillman story.
Yeah, and his mom spent years fighting the government for answers. His brother Kevin testified in front of Congress, and he said point blank that the investigations were designed to arrive at a conclusion rather than the truth. Pat was post-death promoted from specialist to corporal and awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart. His ashes were scattered at sea.
And I say all of this because when you hold a Pat Tillman downtown or a Pat Tillman manga in your hand, you're holding something that carries all of this weight. The weight of a football player, a scholar, a man who chose service over money, a man who also questioned that same service and its purpose, the man the government tried to turn into a symbol he never wanted to be, and the family who fought to make sure the real story got told. That, ladies and gentlemen, who's actually on the card every single time you hold it.
That's right. All right, let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about the hobby now. And the first thing you need to understand about Tillman cards is the timeline, Ben. It's a little weird, and that weirdness matters for collectors.
Yeah, Tillman was drafted once again in 1998. He played only through 2001. The late 90s and early 2000s football card market was pretty wild. Just a glut of overproduction. The junk wax era extended. It's kind of like a hangover. It was still being felt by all of us collectors, and there wasn't the kind of licensing consolidation you'll see in the hobby later. So his rookie cards span this kind of super weird time in history.
Yeah. Now, his most widely recognized rookie card amongst collectors is actually the 2001 Upper Deck MVP number 7. Now, you're probably asking yourself, like, you're doing the math. You're like, hold on, he was drafted in 98 and he played through 2001, but the 2001 Upper Deck's his rookie. Why? Well, because technically Tillman's first meaningful cards appeared in sets released in 98, but there was some licensing confusion. And Upper Deck's MVP product released in 2001 is just what most of the hobby considers his definitive rookie card. It's the one that shows up in the PSA pop reports. Yeah, I looked this up earlier today, Ben. You can get like that base card, that 2001 Upper Deck MVP number 7 in a PSA 10, sold for as much as $900 recently.
And then you got the 2001 Fleer Tradition number 325, another card widely cited as a true rookie. There's also the 2001 Upper Deck Rookie FX insert that Pat appears in, which has a smaller pop and commands a little bit more money. PSA 9 examples of the Rookie FX have sold for a few $100, depending on the timing of the platform.
Yeah, here's the honest assessment of the classic rookie card market. These aren't like, moon money cards in most grades, right? The raw Fleer Tradition rookie card might cost you $15 to $30, $50, whatever. PSA 9 MVP, you're going to be looking at $100, $150. They're accessible for collectors who want to have Tillman on their shelf. But the ceiling is real. It's not insane for standard grades on these cards. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that does get crazy, though, here pretty soon. So let's talk about that. The elephant in the room, or I don't know, maybe we should say the bald eagle in the room, Ben. The 2020 Panini Donruss Optic Downtown number 1, Pat Tillman. And I'll even say, I put them on the same scale. There's also just the Panini Donruss without the Optic Downtown Pat Tillman. This is the card. Like, if you follow the hobby at all and you've seen a Tillman card discussed anywhere, like, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, wherever, it's almost always this card.
Over 15 years from his death, like, this is the card that holds the biggest value. And it's because the design is genuinely something different. Panini put Tillman in his Cardinals uniform, but the background is layered with his military portrait, an American flag, a bald eagle, and a hand-drawn depiction of the area surrounding his statue at the State Farm Stadium. It's patriotic. It is gorgeous in its design work, and it hit the market during the pandemic hobby boom of 2020 when everything was going insane.
But here's the thing, right? Unlike a lot of boom era cards that, since came back down to earth, this one's actually held, and then some. It's grown. Recently, that card, that Downtown PSA 10, sold for $16,500. Now, by the way, Ben, there's a gold vinyl 1 of 1 of that as well. I know the gentleman that until very recently owned it. And we ran into each other at a local card shop recently, right before he sold it, in fact. And I asked him where he bought it. And I asked him what he paid for it, and he told me he paid $30,000 for it. And he bought it from a guy named Nate out in Tennessee. A lot of you might know Grand Slam Collectibles, one of the most amazing card shops in the country. Bought it from Nate a couple years ago for $30,000, which at the time sounded ridiculous. But I happen to know that he recently sold this card, this Downtown gold vinyl 1 of 1. And I know for a fact it sold into the 6 figures. So we're talking about a couple years. He went from what everybody thought was overpaying, $30,000 for this gold vinyl, to more than 3.5xing his money on this card, because just the mystique of Pat Tillman just continues to grow and grow, right? So we're not just talking about a guy that played safety for a perennial bad team who only played 4 seasons in the NFL. We're talking about a guy that was an impact player and more importantly, was an impact human being and an impact patriot.
I think it's interesting that the hobby doesn't realize the amount of deals that happen behind closed doors to people that may never show the card again, or to Asia, or to overseas markets, or Abu Dhabi. And these sales aren't all recorded. But there's a lot of big cards and a lot of big sales that happen that you'll never know about and you can never comp against because it's never been recorded. Like the Wimby sale that just happened last week for over $5 million privately, but they disclosed the sale price. But how do you contextualize that much money for a Pat Tillman card when his rookie cards are only a few $100 and a PSA 10? Think about who he was as a football player statistically. Solid, respected, Ring of Honor worthy, but not a Hall of Famer on his play alone. You're not paying for raw football card stats. You're paying for the story. And this story doesn't exist in a whole lot of other players. The card is almost a relic of American history more than a sports card, and a way to honor people who paid the ultimate price to defend our country.
Yeah. And, Ben, people treat it that way. Collectors love to pull out this card on Memorial Day or Veterans Day, the 4th of July, or April 22nd anniversary of his death. You can always see a little bump in attention and sales that time. This is a card with an emotional calendar attached to it. That's not normal hobby behavior.
Let's talk about the autograph question, because I have to be honest with you about the Pat Tillman card market, and it's the thing that both defines the market but also limits it. There are essentially no certified on-card autographs of Pat Tillman from his playing days.
Yeah, he played in the late 90s, early 2000s, which wasn't a great era for certified autographs in football to begin with. And Tillman himself, as you might imagine, was just not someone who sought commercial opportunities. He wasn't signing deals for signed insert cards. Again, he died in 2004. So if you want a Pat Tillman autograph, you're looking for like vintage in-person signed items that predate certification, maybe a signed photo or a program, that kind of thing. And those move at very high prices through major auction houses with heavy scrutiny on those. But the cool thing is the absence of a certified auto is also kind of fascinating from a market perspective, because it means the downtown card, and by the way, the other modern cards, you mentioned briefly that Prism Black manga card. A close buddy of mine bought the first one that sold anywhere in the world for a little over $21,000 a few months ago, right? You're not competing with $10,000 and $20,000 autograph cards. It's not, siphoning the demand away from that downtown or that manga. There's only a couple like trophy cards, if you will. And so that consolidation of desire into these just couple of cards is a huge part of what makes them so powerful.
Let's close this episode down. If you're building a Pat Tillman PC, here's our hierarchy. Here from Cardboard Wars, this is our opinion. Start by picking up the 2001 Upper Deck MVP rookie card in PSA 9 or 10. It's affordable, historically significant, the closest thing to a traditional rookie card the market has. Then get the 2020 Donruss Optic Downtown. This is your centerpiece, the Mona Lisa of your collection. Budget accordingly in whatever grade you can acquire, and then start filling in some of the more modern parallels the National Treasures cards or the Select Snapshots or the Panini Black mangas so that we can honor this guy with cards across all different eras.
Yeah, and I want to add, by the way, though, if you consider yourself an investor as well as a hobbyist, that downtown PSA 10, I know it's not cheap, but I believe the price is durable. This is a card that benefits from events that never stop happening. I mentioned, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, kind of this ongoing national conversation about military service and sacrifice. The absence of autographs that I mentioned as well. So there's no ceiling put on it from a card above it. Like that downtown, that is the anchor. And the long-term comps, the long-term outlooks on that card are really good.
I hope this episode reminds you of something we should never let the hobby forget. The reason these cards have value is because a real man made an extraordinary choice and then was failed by an institution that he served. His family spent decades demanding the truth. His brother stood in front of Congress and spoke for him when he couldn't speak for himself. That's the card, Kevin, that you and I get to hold.
Yeah. Truth is, Pat Tillman probably would have hated being on a trading card, being basically a commodity. He was aggressively private, turned down endorsements when he was alive. But since we're here, since the market exists, I think the least we can do is know the real story every single time we talk about that card. And don't just say things like, oh, yeah, that's the guy that left the NFL to join the Army. Say his name. Know the man and know the story.
We are lucky enough to live in the United States or wherever you're listening, but Kevin and I are in the United States. And we are not in a perfect country, but I've been to a lot of other places, Kevin. And they are as bad, if not multiples worse, and for a variety of reasons. If you ever visit me and you come to my building, on the top of my building is an American flag. You can not like presidents or politics or anything else, but if you work at my company or if you're in my world, you better like and love this country, because it's created a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunities for a lot of us, but only because of people like Corporal Patrick Daniel Tillman, who was born November 6th, 1976, and lived only till April 22nd, 2004. Not just a guy on the card, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cardboard Wars, with another glimpse into the history of a human, a hero, and into the hobby. Give us a follow, share the episode, reach out to us with your feedback and thoughts, and let's go pick up a Pat Tillman card next time you're at a show. And just kind of keep that one in your PC.
Thanks for listening to Cardboard Wars on the Rippin Podcast Network. Don't forget to leave a rating and review, and check out rippin.com to get connected to what we have coming up. Find us on Instagram and let us know what you would like to hear about on a future episode of Cardboard Wars. Until next time, keep rippin'.